Hi everyone, my name is Angie. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my first quarterly wrap up of 2025. And also, if you don't like my glasses, you don't need to tell me. I'm still trying to figure it out, okay? I'll figure it out on my own. Today we are going over my first quarterly wrap up of the year. So we're talking January through March. I decided pretty early on, I think like pretty much as soon as the new year hit, that I was going to do quarterly wrap ups this year just because I find monthly wrap ups to be a little bit too repetitive, like for myself, especially since I am very deep in a reading slump right now. So, you know, if I were to pull up with a January wrap up and I was like, I read 2 books this month, I don't think that is very fun personally. Not for me. I think other people could make it fun. I don't think I could make it fun. Yeah, I'm in like a huge reading slump. I always say I'm getting out of it, but we'll see. Maybe now I really am. You never know. My reading has been slowly increasing every month. So maybe the next quarterly wrap up, maybe I'll have read like 300 books. You never know. But yeah, this wrap up is not too big. I read 11 books in the first 3 months of the year. Of those 11 books, I read 1 horror book, 1 fantasy book, 1 romantasy book, 1 graphic novel, 2 memoirs, and 5 contemporary romance books. And then the way I consume those books, I listened to 5 audiobooks. I read 3 ebooks, and then 3 of them were like combo reads or like immersive reads, however you want to say it. But basically, I listened to the audiobook and read with my eyeballs at the same time. And those 11 books totaled 3,263 pages, and I consumed nearly 72 hours of audiobooks. And I am someone that like includes the page count from the books that I listen to into like my final page count just because I want to. And then my current average rating for the year is 3.98, which is really, really good. At some point, my like default rating became 4 stars. It used to be 3 stars, but now I've been rating more things 4 stars. I think at some point I was like, you know, it's good to be critical of like what you're reading, but sometimes I'm like, you know, this book was perfectly fine. And I think in the past I would have given a perfectly fine book maybe more so like a 3 instead of a 4. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back. You never know. But right now we're at a 3.98. I do not predict it going higher than that. I kind of only predict it going lower. I don't know, because that's like a pretty high average rating. So it would be impressive if I went higher. I would love that, honestly. You know, we'll keep checking in. So we'll see where that ends up. And then one other stat that I do have, it's just like kind of built into the spreadsheet that I have. I will link it down below. I got it on Etsy. But it is kind of like the amount spent and the amount saved on books. So the way that I fill this out personally is I will find like the retail price for whatever book I'm reading or the audiobook or ebook, whatever like version, I will put that price. For amount spent, I will put either $0 if I got it from like the library or KU or like Everend. I listened to a couple of these books on Everend. And then if it's like from my physical TBR or it's like an ebook that I purchased or whatever, I will put like the same exact amount in both columns. I think that makes sense. But basically, according to that statistic, I spent $93.52 on these books and I saved $69.98. So technically I spent more money than I saved, but I'm not really mad about that because to me that just means that I'm actually like consuming the things that I'm buying, which I'm fine with. I basically just see this as like, oh, if I had purchased those other things, like the things from the library or from Everend or whatever, I would have spent closer to like $150. I do think it is a fun statistic to track. For example, if you read all from the library, you can really like, you know, see how much money you are saving by reading like only through the library. That would be really great. I don't do that. I get my books from like various different places. I did get a handful of these from the library, or maybe 2 or 3, but for the most part, it's from all over the place. But let's not dilly-dally. Let's go ahead and go through the books. I did make a little bit of a script. Also wrote the script like I was talking, so hopefully it's not like too stilted or anything like that. I just want to give you guys like a real proper review for these books. If I don't write my thoughts down, I will not know what to say, basically. Especially because some of these books I read in January, and that was like 3 months ago. You expect me to remember that? Well, let's go ahead and go through the books. And then at the very, very end, I will go over like some quick goals that I have for the next quarter because I've done some reflecting and I think there are some things that I want to make sure to include. Not necessarily change, but some things to add. We'll go ahead and go in chronological order because as boring as it is, I do love to talk about things in the order that I do them. So we'll just stick with that today. We could switch it up maybe later, but today we're just going to do chronological. So we'll go January, February, March. So in January, I read 2 books. Not that much, but that's okay. Like, especially like, you know, around the holidays, and I know it's January, but you're still like, you know, in January, you're still like recovering from the holidays. You know, it's just a busy time of the year. But the very first book that I read in January was Down the Drain by Julia Fox. I am no stranger to celebrity memoirs, and this is definitely one that I had been wanting to pick up for a while. It was definitely on my radar, and I really am glad that I did pick it up because Julia Fox has lived a pretty wild life, at least in comparison to mine. She gets up to a lot of different things in this book, and honestly, a lot of them happen when she's like very young. If you are worried about the contents of this book, I would just look at the blurb. I realize that the blurb really covers a lot of this stuff that kind of is mentioned in this book, but of course, always check content warnings. That's really just like a blanket statement for every book that I talk about. And honestly, like every book that you ever hear about, I always say, check your content warnings. I went to public school, so like it's not like anything in this book really scandalized me, but Julia Fox definitely lived a very different life from me, which is usually what I look for in a memoir. And I really do commend Julia Fox for being so like raw and vulnerable in this book, and she really does get very vulnerable. She talks about like various different like toxic relationships she has. She talks about her previous drug addiction and like the loss of friends as well. But at the same time, even though she's talking about like some very heavy moments in her life, her confidence really does come through like the whole time. Because if I'm going to like make anyone the spokesperson for confidence, I really am gonna choose Julia Fox. And whether or not that's like truly the case, that's just like how I view her. Though honestly, before this, I really didn't have much of a perception of her. Like I've never even seen Uncut Gems. I probably should. But like now that I've read this book, it's not like I know her, but like I know her, you know? And I think probably my biggest takeaway from this book, other than to like have confidence in everything you do, is that like it's never too late to start something new or to like take new paths, because it always seemed like even when she was like at her like lowest moments, she would like have a new opportunity and she would take it, and that would open up like so many more paths for her. Of course, it does help that I'm pretty sure Julia Fox was like born to be a star. You know, those people that you're like, oh yeah, like that's a superstar. Like her birth name is Julia Fox. Like that is a celebrity name if I've ever heard it. You know, whether or not she's a superstar or not, I do think it takes a lot of confidence to like live as many lives as she has, because it takes a lot of guts to do that. All in all, I love this book and I love Julia Fox, and I think you would too if you check this book out. Like I said, in January, I only read 2 books, which is interesting in itself, right? But another really interesting thing about this month was that I didn't read a single romance book, which is shocking for me. Even though it was one of my goals this year to read a book from every genre, to like just, you know, try a bunch of different things, I was still always expecting to like, you know, have romance books in between each book and stuff like that. You know, like I was still planning on reading a lot of romance, just like adding in some other genres as well. But this month I didn't finish a single one. And I specifically say finish because I do try to read a little bit every single day. So it's not like I wasn't reading romance here. I think I was DNFing a ton of books. What I was DNFing, I have no idea. I really don't track DNFs probably as well as I should, but I know that I was reading tons of stuff and just like none of it was sticking. So the 2 books that did stick, neither of them are romance. But the second book that I did finish in January was The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. This is my second Paul Tremblay book. The first one I read was Horror Movie. I read it, I think like last October or something like that. And I think if I had to choose between the 2, I think I maybe liked Horror Movie just a little bit more. I think that kind of plot and like concept was a bit cooler to me, but this book was perfectly fine. And I also kind of thought Horror Movie was perfectly fine. Like I don't really have super strong opinions on either of them. What happens in Cabin at the End of the World is this family goes on a vacation to a cabin like in the middle of nowhere. It's like, I think it's like in New Hampshire, like almost Canada. It's super secluded. I don't remember if the family specifically wanted to be like cut off from the outside world. One thing that I haven't mentioned yet about this book is that I remember very little of it. But anyway, we're at this cabin in the woods, and the daughter of the family, Wen, she is outside collecting grasshoppers like a curious child does. And all of a sudden, this man comes up to her. Remember, they're in the middle of nowhere with no people around. So that is strange. He does come up and like kind of try to befriend her, and he says he has 3 other friends there with him and that her dads need to let them in because like they need their help specifically to save the world because the world is ending. And even though Wen is like 7 or 8 or something like that, she can tell that like this is weird and freaky. So she runs inside and gets her dads, and they do everything in their power to like keep these people out basically. And then, you know, many things happen from there. And I will say it was pretty captivating. I mean, what a like terrifying situation to be in. Imagine if you're in that situation. I would be so scared. But here's what I was saying, that I don't really remember anything that happened in this book. I could not tell you how this book ended, and I'm sure it was wild. Like, I'm sure it was completely out of pocket, and I could not tell you what happened. Like, I think I have an idea of what happened, but I could be really wrong. But if that is what happened, then Paul Tremblay, he really did that. But generally, I don't remember what happened. A lot of this kind of like synopsis I got from like other reviews and just like from really, really racking my brain to try to figure out what happened. And it's also kind of sad because I remember when I finished this book, I did have something to say about it, like almost something remotely intelligent. I was like, oh, I kind of see the point of this, but that is gone just with like the rest of my memory of this book. That being said, I don't not recommend this book because I think it would be really, really easy to recommend. Like if you like something thrilling and something dystopian, this is perfect for you. Like it will keep you on the edge of your seat. I just can't really like speak to like how well it will stick in your head. I guess another little side note is that there is an adaptation for this book that I haven't seen, but if you're interested in book adaptations, you can go check this one out. Now we are in February. Happy new month, but February was the total opposite of January. I did not read anything but romance. I read 4 books this month, so, you know, we are definitely making progress. You know, we're reading more, but yeah, it was all romance. Maybe to compensate for January. I don't really know what happened, honestly. I make conscious decisions in the books that I read. I think I just don't make conscious decisions on like what genre specifically, but the first book that I read in January was A Deal with the Devil by Elizabeth O'Rourke. I love this book. This was a reread and it was kind of like exactly what I needed. I don't think I've spoken about it here specifically. Well, maybe I might have, but I've definitely spoken about it on TikTok and like in my personal life. But I love this book. I love this series. I think this series is like nearly perfect. I think A Deal with the Devil is kind of like a perfect rom-com. I don't know if you'd be able to tell by the content that I've made so far, but I'm really not very easily impressed by books. Like most of the time, the books that I read, I kind of just think that they're perfectly fine. Like the last one. It really is a big deal that I love this book and I love this series. I think of the 4 books in this series, I've given 3 of them 5 stars, and I think that last one was like a very easy 4-star. So like I really cannot stress enough like how brilliant I find this series by Elizabeth O'Rourke. A Deal with the Devil is the first book in the Grumpy Devil series, and like I said, it is so good. It is like a grumpy boss assistant romance. The main character, Tolly, moved to LA to, like, she moved with her ex-boyfriend, who sucks, by the way, but that's kind of irrelevant. And she's not doing the best money-wise. Since her and her boyfriend have, like, obviously separated, she's not been doing well. But she did manage to get a book deal for this, like, YA fantasy book that she's writing. That's also really not going that well. Like, writing-wise, she's, like, you know, not really writing anything. And she spent her advance, like, helping out her family. So, like, it's not going well, like, at all. I think she's, like, working at a bar, which there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, I think she's just really stressed about the advance. Things really do start to brighten up, though. Her friend, who is an assistant to this plastic surgeon, needs her to fill in for him because he and his partner are adopting a child and he needs to take time off from work. And this job, while it is demanding, it helps that it pays like super, super well. So it's kind of like exactly what she needed, you know. Thank God for the rom-com gods, right? But of course, there has to be an issue. And the biggest issue in this case is that Tolly does not like her new boss. Her boss is a plastic surgeon named Hayes Flynn, and he is grumpy, like I said, and he is like partying all the time. He's like a womanizer. He's a workaholic. Like, there's really not many reasons for Tolly to like this guy. But of course, through the power of forced proximity and banter, they start to get along much better. Again, I love this book. I think I read it in like a day, and I have not been in a place where I'm reading voraciously, obviously, since I've been in a reading slump. And also the fact that it was a reread and I loved it just as much the second time, I think really says a lot for this book. I mean, like I said, I'm kind of picky, so I just love this book. Like, I love this book so much that I was thinking while I was reading it that if I were to ever write a book, I would want it to be like this book. That is how much I like it. Like, I would strive to write a romance like this romance. I remember seeing Elizabeth O'Rourke on a panel at a book convention a few years ago. The authors were all asked a question about dual POV. Elizabeth O'Rourke said she actually likes single POV more because you kind of get that like, oh, does he like me kind of feeling, and like you just don't know what the MMC is thinking. And she uses that here. Sometimes she does have dual POV, but this is one of her single POV books. She really does do that like, oh, does he like me kind of thing, like so well. I think because we were never in Hayes's mind. Like, anytime there was any kind of romantic moment, I would get like butterflies, which, like, you know, that doesn't happen with every romance book. And then another thing Elizabeth O'Rourke is really good at is she makes her main characters really easy to root for. She always like puts in some sort of like family dynamic or like some sort of relationship with a different character that is really frustrating to read. Like that other person or her family or whatever like takes the main character for granted or like is using them or something like that. And it is frustrating. Like I said, like it's annoying to see, but like you so desperately want the main character to be vindicated that it's like, I don't know, it like pushes you forward into the story, if that makes sense. In conclusion, I love this book and I think you should read it. My next romance book for February was Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop. And this romance book is another one that is so good and just like a genuinely really solid book. And I can also promise that this will definitely be in a summer romance recommendation video, like I'm telling you right now. Only for the Week has like such a juicy setup. It starts with our main character, Janelle, on her way to Tulum for her sister's wedding. She's the maid of honor. And like, who was her sister marrying? Yeah, her sister is marrying Janelle's ex-boyfriend. It's actually like not a big deal though. Janelle kind of doesn't care. Like Janelle, you know, can easily see that her sister and her ex are way better together than like Janelle and her ex ever were. But it's still like, you know, like I said, it's still juicy, right? So it's not a big deal that her sister is marrying her ex-boyfriend, but what is a big deal is the best man, Rome, who is obviously her ex-boyfriend's like best friend or whatever. Rome and Janelle really actually never spent that much time together despite like having that mutual friend, because obviously Rome was like, you know, attracted to her. He didn't want to, he didn't want to, they couldn't be together because, she was dating someone. But now they can because they're both single and they're in Tulum. And that is exactly what they do. They finally act on their chemistry, but only for the week, which hence the name of the book. This book is very hot and very spicy, and it's really good. I really like it. Natasha Bishop has also done kind of the same thing that I said like Elizabeth O'Rourke does, where she creates like a really kind of frustrating dynamic with a different character. And in this case, that character is Janelle's sister. I have never wanted to fight a character in a book so much as Janelle's sister. She's very frustrating, but it has a nice conclusion. I will say that. It has a very satisfying conclusion. Oh, and then another note, I did listen to the audiobook for this and it was pretty good. So if you're thinking about picking it up, maybe you could check out the audiobook. The next book in February was Lipstick and Camera Clicks by DJ Murphy. I have talked about this book, I think, a couple of times, but this is a great book if you love reality dating shows because it follows a reality dating show. At the time, I was watching tons of dating shows, so it kind of was like perfect for me, honestly. So our main character books a show because she is kind of like an up and coming, well, maybe not up and coming, but she's a new makeup artist and she's trying to make a name for herself and she figures it'll be pretty good publicity. She also has like a weird situation going on with her ex, but that's like honestly kind of irrelevant, but it also does kind of have like some sort of part in like her joining the show, but it's really irrelevant at the end of the day. She finds out about the show because one of her childhood best friends, River, is like a producer. And of course, obviously she's always been in love with River. I mean, come on. His name is River. Like what a like love interest name, right? He does not want her to join the show just because it's like a reality show and stuff like that. But she does join, against what he says. Who cares what he says, right? As you can see, there are two men on the cover. One of them is obviously River, and then the other one is like the bachelor in the show. So I was definitely confused probably for at least like 60% of it, honestly. I did not know what was going to happen there, if she was going to have to choose between them. I was hoping she wouldn't have to choose, if you know what I mean. But a choice is made. This book was so fun and engaging at first, but I did kind of start to lose momentum like towards the end, I think. I think it was just, I don't know. Romance has been kind of weird for me recently. I think one thing that maybe could have like caused my like loss in momentum was there were sometimes like some big jumps in time. I mean, not that big. Like, I mean, like a week, like it would be like a new chapter and be like, oh, a week has passed, which I know is not that long. But like, I feel like when you're in a dating show, every single day matters. I know it would be impossible for like DJ Murphy to talk about every single day in like a 6-week dating show, but like, I don't know. I just felt like we lost some time there. And also like the epilogue wasn't something that I really enjoy, but I think I'm just becoming like so like apathetic to romance epilogues, which is like concerning because I consider myself to be a huge romance book fan, but that's like a personal issue, I think. But I don't know. I think if you're like not as picky as I am, I think you would have a perfectly good time with this book. It is very entertaining. And like I said, if you like reality dating shows, you'll love this too. It has like a little bit of like that drama that you're expecting. It's fun. The last book that I read in February, I did say I only read romance in February, but I guess technically this is like more so fantasy. But for some reason I said it was all romance. It's like romantasy, but I personally think it's more so like fantasy, like cozy fantasy. Anyway, it is Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Fairies. I don't really know what I should say about this book. I mean, it's kind of like everywhere, right? But I guess if you don't know, this book follows Emily Wilde as she completes her Encyclopedia of Fairies. It is just as cute as it sounds. It's like cute and cozy. There is also a romance. So the love interest, his name is Wendell Bambleby, and I really like them together. I like him as a character. I like her as a character too, but them together, it is very cute. I'm glad that I finally read this book. It took me like way too long to read it. And also when I first started reading the book, it was snowing outside, which I live in southern Texas. That doesn't happen very often. That was nice because in this book, the setting is super snowy. It's probably like comparable to like Iceland or something like that. Great vibes, honestly. I'm planning on continuing the series basically as soon as possible. I have decided that I'm going to listen to the audiobooks from now on. Last time I like did a combo, but I found that the audiobook was perfectly fine, and I kind of like have a weird thing about the covers, and I think to get all the covers that I want, I'd have to like purchase too many things and it'd be too complicated. Okay, time for another month. We are now in March, so the last month of this wrap up. In March, I read 5 books. So like I said, we're getting a little bit more every single month. I don't know if that'll continue. It's okay if it doesn't, but it would be cool if it did. In March, I read, what did I read? In March, I kind of had a nice little combo of books. I read 2 romance books, 1 romantasy, and 1 graphic novel and 1 memoir. So I'm pretty happy with that combo of books. Sorry, obviously I'm standing and I didn't think it would hurt me. But it's hurting me. That's okay. We're at the last month. If you see me moving a little bit, I'm sorry, but my knee is hurting. I don't know what's wrong with me. Okay, so the first book that I read in March was Lost and Lassoed by Lyla Sage. And this is the 3rd book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. I wouldn't say that it is a favorite, but I'm only saying that because I don't think I have a favorite in the series. I've read them all so far and I plan on continuing, but I kind of find the series to be like nothing too like crazy stand out. Honestly, like I said, I'm going to continue to read them. Like I always have a good time reading them, but I do always find them to be kind of forgettable. I do forget these books really easily, which I don't necessarily think is like a bad thing. The tropes in Lost and Lassoed are really fun, admittedly. It's like single dad, nanny, opposites attract, like dislike to love, and like kind of also in a way second chance. Our FMC is Teddy Anderson. She is like a chaotic, small town loving fashion girly, and then our MMC is Gus Ryder, and he is like a serious ranch working single dad. Teddy and Gus have never really gotten along. I think you could kind of imagine why from how I described them, but basically Gus thinks that Teddy is like too wild and Teddy thinks that Gus is like too stuck up. But it's kind of too bad for them because Teddy loses her job at this local fashion boutique, a job she loved, but the store is closing down and Gus really needs a nanny. And obviously Teddy's available, so, they start to spend more time together. And, maybe Gus realizes Teddy isn't so like wild and chaotic. And, maybe Teddy realizes that Gus isn't so stuck up and he's like a really good dad. Like, I almost don't think I need to explain this book to you. Like, I think you know what happens in this book. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily memorable, but I don't fault the book for this. Like, I'm not really like looking for this book to change my life, and also that means I can always reread it, which I'm never bad at. And also, I guess another note for March, Lost and Lassoed I finished towards the beginning of the month. I actually read it the same week that I went to the Houston rodeo, so I had a little bit of a theme of the week. But it took me a while to finish another book. All of these next books I finished within the last like 5 days of the month. I actually filmed a vlog of me reading the last 2 on the last day of the month because I just like really felt like I needed to cram them in, and I don't normally care, but something about like the vibes of everything, something about how I was feeling, I felt like I needed to do that, and so that is what I did. But just so you know, these next 4 books, I read them all probably from like March 25th and like to the 31st. Like, I really crammed these last books in. But the second book that I did finish in March was Ruthless by Caroline Peckham and Susanne Valenti. Have I read this book 3 times now? Maybe I have, but that's between me and the book. Anyway, Ruthless is the 2nd book in the Zodiac Academy series, a series that I love, or like I'm obsessed with, but I just have a weird relationship with it. Like, I love it, I'm obsessed with it, but I know objectively that it is not good. So I kind of just like go through my life loving it, but never really recommending it. So I'm not recommending it to you right now just because if you don't like it, I don't want to be responsible. The second book, Ruthless is like a solid 3.5 or so. The first like 6 books in the series The rating will never change. I have a very concrete idea on like what my ranking is of those books in the series. When we get to the later books, then that's where it gets a little bit dicier. But the first 6, I know exactly what they are, what I'm going to rate them. This one is a 3.5. So instead of talking about the book, let's actually talk about how I consumed it, which was via graphic audio. This is my second graphic audio. My first graphic audio was the first book in the series. And I had a perfectly good time last time listening to the graphic audio, but this time I was having the time of my life. Like, it felt like I was rewatching a favorite show. I was so excited to like listen to it. Like, normally I just listen to audiobooks, you know, when I'm cleaning, while I'm driving, stuff like that. But this time I was like, I just want to sit down and like listen to this because I'm having so much fun. And I don't know what changed. I think maybe it's because I'm like a little bit later into the series, or maybe it's because I actually recast one of the main characters. For the first one of the male main characters, I was like honestly, he was pretty badly cast. Graphic audio went and they changed it. I guess like people were complaining, which is, I always like to give props where props are due, and props to graphic audio for like listening to their customers. Like, they actually even went back and like re-recorded the first book, like his lines from the first book. So I don't know, maybe that helped, but I had a really good time. But does that also make me feel better for like the high price tag on these? Not really. These are not cheap. And I was always kind of planning on maybe reading them slowly, but like I said, they are expensive. But now that reading the second one, it really confirmed that I had, such a good time that I think I am going to continue buying them. It'd be nice to have them and, just being able to like re-listen to them like throughout the years. It could be nice because, like I said, it felt like rewatching a favorite show, which is just like always a really comforting feeling. I was having these wild thoughts of reading the entire Zodiac Academy like universe. A lot of those books I have not read. It's like 20 books. We'll see if that happens, but it would be interesting, but also like, I don't know if I want to do that to myself. So, don't hold me to anything. The next book that I read in March was The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. At this point in the month, like I talked about, I'm really struggling to finish books. That's like honestly the theme of this whole first quarter, but I'm struggling right now in March as I'm picking up this book. And what's a better way to finish books than to read a graphic novel? Kay O'Neill is also a non-binary author, so it also just happened to fulfill one of the prompts for the Transrates Readathon, which I am at this point in the month participating in. I read this first volume. I've only read the first one so far. I read it all in one sitting, like right before I was going to bed, and I felt so warm and cozy reading this book. It was so cute. Like, I kind of just even want to like pick up a physical version just so I can like look at the pictures. They're so cute. Like, the little dragons are so adorable. I do find a lot of things adorable, but trust me, these are so cute. This first volume of the Tea Dragon Society follows Greta. Greta runs into a tea dragon at out and about, and she returns it to its owner, and there she finds out all about like this like dying art form of taking care of dragons, like tea dragons. And like I said, these dragons are the cutest thing. They're literally tiny little dragons that have like branches as horns, and on those branches are like tea leaves, so they like they grow and then they're harvested, and they're so cute. And they're all named after obviously like different teas. I think we meet like ginseng, I think. I don't remember who else we met, but they're all so cute. I'm so glad that I picked this up because, like I said, it's adorable. I read it through my library, which is great. I'm so happy that it was available. And also, I guess a little side note, I don't remember if it was the Harris County or the Houston library. One of those two, I got it from one of those, and it seems like all of the volumes are available. So if you're in the Houston or Harris County area, you might be able to get it too on Libby. I want to read all of the volumes that exist, but I don't really want to rush through them. So you'll probably see them on like, the next quarterly wrap up too. The penultimate book in this wrap up is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. I had been dying to read this book ever since it came out, so I'm glad that I finally did. I have this problem where if I hear a book is going to be really good, I kind of like, I always like delay reading it because I'm scared it's like not going to live up to my expectations. I would say that this one did. I really like this book. I'm really glad that I finally picked it up. This is Akwaeke Emezi's first romance book. They are coming out with another one later this year, but it's like a paranormal romance, which I honestly have never been so excited for something. I'm really excited to pick that up. You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty follows Faye, an artist that's living in Brooklyn. She is like currently grieving the death of her husband, who died 5 years prior to the start of this book. And like in an effort to kind of like, start living again, she hooks up with this guy at this rooftop party. And then from there, like, the summer starts, and also like the plot of the book really starts. She starts like kind of dating this really great guy named Nasir. Nasir has a hookup at this museum on his home island. He is from the Caribbean. So basically she gets to show her art there, and like also at the same time she gets to spend a few weeks on this like really beautiful island. However, She wasn't expecting that when she got there, she would be like super attracted to Nasir's dad, Alim. So yes, this is a romance book, but it does also deal with other topics, particularly grief. There's a lot of talk of grief in this book. I initially gave this book like, I think like a 4.5 star rating, which is pretty good. Like that's a pretty high rating. I wouldn't say it's like concrete. I think my rating kind of like wavers here and there, because while I did really like it, I think there maybe were a couple of things that I would have liked to be a little bit different. Like one, I wish there was a bit more relationship development between Faye and Alim, like kind of at the start of their relationship. Once we actually got into the relationship, I mean, akwaeke emezi's writing just really like shone through. They are so good at writing like romance. Like it felt so sensual and like hot and sexy. Like it was great. And then I also don't really love like how long it took us to like really get to the island too. I kind of wish that was like sped up in some way. Not sped up, but like maybe something was cut out, or you know what I mean? It just took a little bit too long to really get the plot moving. But I do love akwaeke emezi's writing. I love their words. I love the way that they like describe things, particularly. I think it's like so beautiful. And like I said, I think they're pretty good at writing romance too, despite this being their first one. But yes, I'm glad to have picked this book up, and I'm also glad to like pick up another book from akwaeke emezi. I read Freshwater like 5 years ago now. I think I read it in 2020, and I had some trouble kind of getting into that book. The writing is very different, but I found this one to be super easy to get into. It was just like a breeze reading it. But I am excited to continue reading akwaeke emezi's backlist, that's for sure. I'm definitely going to try to make that a goal this year. But now we are at our last book for the month of March, and also for this wrap up. It is Pageboy by Elliot Page. Like I said, I am a fan of celebrity memoir, so it is not shocking to see another one here. This one is pretty different from Down the Drain, as you can imagine. You definitely still want to like check your content warnings and everything with this book. Elliot Page does get very vulnerable about like his life, both like in and out of the acting world. And also overall, this is like a very serious memoir. You might think that's pretty obvious from like the content of this book. This memoir focuses on Elliot Page's sexuality, career, and transition. But I really mean it when I say that this is a serious memoir, because I think that there are other memoirs that deal with like very serious and heavy topics, but you can kind of still like feel the levity and like their writing, and there might be like, you know, it might still be like kind of funny. And while I'm not saying that there weren't like, you know, some funny moments in this book, because like, you know, in someone's life there's always going to be a couple funny moments, the tone of this one is very serious. Could it have been because I was listening to the memoir and Elliot Page is a very monotone voice? Possibly, but I don't think that's really all of it. I do think it was just a very serious memoir. I'm very glad that I chose to read this memoir. It was my first time reading one from someone who is trans, and I definitely think it obviously gave me perspective on things that are outside of my own lived experience. And I think it's great that people who are cisgender like me are able to read books like this and kind of get a perspective on things like gender dysphoria. But I do think that at the end of the day, this book is for queer and trans people. I mean, Elliot Page basically says it in his author's note at the start of this book. Other books that he was reading before and during his transition really like were helpful and comforting, and I think that that was his ultimate goal with this book. The author's note in general was really nice. I like that it was at the beginning, because he basically says that this is his experience, and you know, there are so many other people's experiences like that. He's not the only one to have said these words, and that it's important to read other trans voices as well. To me, that's telling me that he's like really aware of his platform, and that he's wanting to uplift other trans voices that might not have the same platform, because you're going to have people like me who have never read a memoir by a trans person who are now going to pick up more, just because that's what I'm planning on doing. If I did have any issues with this book, I would say it would be like the timeline of like everything, like all the little anecdotes. There was like at one point when he was talking about something of when he was like 30, and then like the next section or the next chapter or something like that, it went into him talking about a role that he played. It was a movie I hadn't seen, so I didn't know what it was, but he said he was playing a teenage girl, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess he could look like pretty young for his age. I guess he could like play a character that is like a lot younger than his age, but we had just gone back in time. So he like was closer to the age of a teenager. But then when I was looking at reviews, it seems like other people also have that issue, but pretty much all of them said like, it's not that big of a deal. Like you should still pick it up. And those are all the books that I read this year. Well, all the books that I read in January, February, and March. But like I promised, I'm going to go over some goals. So these are some things that I kind of not necessarily want to change, but things I want to add. So that is what I'm hoping to do this next quarter. The first one I have is to read more diversely. Of the books that I read, 8 of the authors were white and 3 of the authors were black, and that could be a lot better. I would like that to be a lot more varied this next quarter. So we'll have to do an update in July? May, June, July. Yeah. Wait, no. April, May, June. We'll do it in July, because I'll film it after. Okay, whatever. But yeah, that is something I want to focus on. I want to read more diversely. And then also, I guess, kind of following that up is I want to read a translated work of fiction. It can just be one. I'm not setting the bar very high, but I'd like to read at least one translated work. I think I did read like a handful of different like nationalities, but there was like American, Canadian, like New Zealand, like, you know, like it wasn't anything really outside of the Western world. So that is something I want to do. I also want to continue to read different genres. So one of my goals this year is to read a book from every single genre, like from what I consider to be every genre in a list that I made. So I'd like to continue that for sure. I think I'm doing really well with that. I think I've already read like 6 different genres this year, which I think is really good. I'm happy with that, but I want to continue to do so. I want to add some new genres as well. I haven't read a mystery thriller book this year. What else haven't I read? I haven't read a nonfiction book outside of like memoirs. So that is something I could also do. So yeah, really those first 3 goals are kind of all the same. It kind of all falls under reading more diversely. So that's really my main goal. And then my last goal, I don't remember putting this here, but it says not be too critical, have some fun. I guess I'll try to have some fun this next quarter. So yeah, those are my goals. And those are also all the books that I read in the first quarter. I'm generally pretty happy. Again, it wasn't like too many books, but I think it's like, okay, like, I don't know, like I do think that I will have more books next quarter, but really it's perfectly fine if I don't. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, there's no telling what could happen. If you would like to see what I end up reading this next quarter, you are more than welcome to subscribe. I would love that. That'd be a lot of fun. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had a bit of fun. I will talk to you a little bit later. Bye. Also, I'm going to sit next time because I am in pain.